Good evening, everyone. This is Divya Jain from BioAngels, and I welcome you to the much awaited Biotech and Healthtech Angel Investment Masterclass, a series of 6 masterclasses to provide an introduction to angel investing in these sectors, making business easier for angel journey and enjoyable both for you and companies you invest in. To give you a gist about BioAngels, it is a unique partnership between BIRAC, an enterprise of the Department of Biotechnology, and Indian Angel Network. That is India's single largest horizontal platform for seed and early stage investing. It is India's first sector BioAngels is India's first sector focused angel investor group in biotech, health tech, medtech, pharma, clean tech, and agri-tech, and brings money, mentoring, and market access to startups, echoing ION's genetics. It aims to fuel the ecosystem through interactions with high quality investors and industry leaders. BioAngels also provides domain expertise and thought leaders to guide with technology understanding and also create a high risk, high return asset class. Moving ahead to today's topic, angel investment in biotech health tech, identifying the next big opportunity. This introduces angel investment in these sunrise sectors and will help you to understand the overall startup ecosystem and investment landscape in biotech and in health tech. Today, we are joined by two BioAngels governance board members, Dr. Manish Diwan, who's the head of BIRAC, and Mr. Srikant Sastri, president of TAI Delhi NCR. Dr. Manish Diwan leads large national programs for Government of India's effort to nurture and empower the biotech innovation ecosystem in India. He's the sectoral lead for national missions, especially Startup India, Make in India, contributes to policy reforms, strategic collaborations, including international partnerships, serves on national committees and advisory boards. He leads national flagship schemes and programs of BIRAC, promoting startups, entrepreneurs, and industry. Dr. Diwan manages risk funding through grant and aid, equity, co-investment by angels, VCs, AIFs, setting up incubation centers for capacity building. Being a central enabler representative, he contributes in ecosystem gap identification and finding solutions. Happy to have you on board, sir.
Thank you, Divya.
Mr. Srikant Sastri is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and IIM Calcutta, who became an entrepreneur in the mid-90s when words like startup were unheard of in India. He has built 2 large services ventures and is presently associated as board member at several university incubators. Mr. Shastri has co-led a task force that created a world-class ventilator during COVID using a radical model for accelerated product development, manufacturing, and go-to-market. He mentors a range of tech and biotech startups at incubators across India. I welcome and thank both of you for joining us today for these Angel Investment Masterclass. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I will just share my screen.
Meanwhile, I'll also request our audience to write down their queries in the chat box. We would take them up towards the end of the session. Thank you.
I hope the screen is visible, Divya.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Divya, and a warm welcome to all the participants and delegates who are attending this masterclass. Before I start, as you can see from the title slide here, this is an angel investment masterclass brought to you by BioAngels, and Manish Diwan here represents BIRAC. So BioAngels is a BIRAC program, and this program is powered by Indian Angel Network. And I've been a proud member of Indian Angel Network for almost 13 years now. So it's a pleasure and a privilege to be with all of you today. So let me start with a story. Now, these are 2 young boys who I spent a lot of time with in 2020. They were the founders of a company called Nokark Robotics. Nikhil and Harshit, they were both 26 at that point of time. Now, Nokark Robotics had received angel funding from IAN's fund, and they were funded for their robotics business. But when COVID happened, their business ran into a problem. Like many other startups and SMEs, they also faced a challenge that when lockdown 1.0 happened, their business came to a standstill. They had near zero cash. They couldn't run their factory to do more manufacturing. They could not go out and get more orders from customers. So, like everyone else, they were staring at a dead end. But as some of you will remember, around the 15th of March, just before the lockdown was declared, the Prime Minister had issued a call saying any company, any startup which can provide products and services to help India fight COVID, please come forward. And these two young boys who've never seen a functioning ventilator inside an ICU, they raised their hand and said, we would like to design and manufacture a ventilator to help India fight COVID. And this was just after lockdown 1.0 got declared. So I and a few others started talking to them and said, okay, tell us what your thinking is. And the first time they sent me this short video and they sent it to me over WhatsApp. And as you'll see here, I'll play this short video that this is a very crude prototype of the very first ventilator they designed. It's very crude, as you can see, but you can see an artificial lung being pumped. And so when they sent me this, obviously I was intrigued, as were other people. And then we said, okay, tell us more. And we got a panel of doctors, both from India and US, to look at this. And they said, look, fundamentally, the underlying principles of science are fine. If these boys get support, they have a chance to actually make this well. Which is when, since they had been invested in by IN Fund, we brought together a group of 20 people on a, brought together a group of 20 people to help them solve these challenges. And we recognized there were challenges everywhere. These two young boys had never designed medical equipment before. 60% of the components are imported components. How do you bring them in during a global lockdown? Factories are not working. So even if you design something, how do you manufacture it? Who will approve and certify the product which has been made so hastily? Will doctors trust the product? Where will money come from? Fortunately, the money part was where we had the most confidence to begin with, because IAN, Indian Angel Network, was in the picture. We had government support from people like Dr. Diwan, but all these other challenges still existed. So what we did very quickly, and this was the first Zoom meeting on March 29, 2020, we brought together a group of 20 diverse experts on a Zoom call at 12 noon. And we did that for 90 days in a row. Every day, 2 hours on a Zoom call, 20 experts from different backgrounds, 4 medtech CEOs, occasionally some doctors, some product experts, supply chain experts, manufacturing experts, funding experts. They came together for a 90-day period to help these two young boys build the ventilator. And at the end of 90 days, you actually had manufactured product ready. Multinational stake 18 months. These boys took 90 days. And as of now, close to 4,000 of these units have been deployed till date. What happened was, as you know, we had the unfortunate Delta wave, which was the second COVID wave in India, which is when a lot of ventilators were required by hospitals across the country. And these ventilators came in great use. The reason the story is important is because COVID was in many ways a tipping point for healthcare in India. There was broad consciousness and acceptance that we need to improve our healthcare infrastructure. And suddenly this came in focus, and which is why it's a right time for us to discuss BioAngels and launch BioAngels. And as it happens, IAN, Indian Angel Network, had been quietly making healthcare investments and biotech investments over a period of time. And this is the current snapshot of the various biotech startups that Indian Angel Network and their fund, IAN Fund, have invested in. Nokark is obviously one of them, but you'll see a full snapshot of logos here. The time is right to support the emerging, very talented biotech startups in India. And later on, you'll hear from Dr. Diwan. why there's been a gradual increase in the number of biotech startups in India over the last 8 years. And a large part of that has been thanks to the government, and particularly thanks to an agency like BioAngels, which has nurtured, incubated, supported, funded biotech startups at the grassroots. And that is now yielding results. And it's all there to see before us. If you look at the quick India's biotech sector, biotech is one umbrella term, but underneath that, there are different subsectors: biopharma, bioservices, bioagriculture, bio-IT, bio-industrial, and medtech. And India now is among the top 12 biotech destinations in the world, third largest in Asia Pacific. No surprises that we have the maximum number of USA FDA approved manufacturing facilities outside of US, and we produce a large number of biotech graduates as well, and the cumulative number is close to 1 million. So the time is right for the biotech sector to take off. In our lifetime, we've all seen how the IT sector took off, other sectors have taken off. So the time is ripe for the biotech sector to take off, thanks to all the hard work that's happened in the past 8 years, plus the fact COVID has brought about a widespread awareness. So BioAngels in this environment aims to be the single largest national platform for biotech investing. So it's a great opportunity for those of you who are individual angels. Some of you may be representing family offices, or some of you may be from a corporate organization. For all of you, it's a great opportunity to get involved with this rapidly emerging biotech ecosystem, to come in and make investments. And the good thing is, because BioAngels is involved and their network of incubators across the country is involved, all these biotech startups get evaluated by domain experts. There's a network of business mentors who are available, and these startups have access to R&D facilities, etc. as well. And then there are programs being put in place to create overseas partnerships for validation, patenting, funding rounds, etc. So with all this groundwork happening, the BioAngels as a partnership between IAN and BioAngels was launched earlier this year. And both of these are now very well-respected entities. And Divya's already provided an intro to Indian Angel Network earlier, but just to snap a few numbers here, there are 500 members in the Indian Angel Network, and there's 1,000 mentors who get involved, and there's a 375 crore fund as well. And then there is BioAngels, which Manish Diwan will talk about shortly. But what I'd like to now spend the next 5 or 10 minutes is to talk through some highlights of what angel investing is about and what angel investors should be looking out for. So 4 broad topics: the what and why of angel investment, who is an angel investor, the how of angel investing, and when to make exit and making returns. So basic primer on angel investing, given that it's such a great opportunity for the biotech sector. So let's start with the what and the why. So all of us, when we invest in our personal capacity, we invest in debt, equity, real estate, and other asset classes. And over a period of time, investing as an angel investor has become one more popular asset class for anyone who has spare money or is a high net worth individual, because in your portfolio of investments or your asset portfolio, angel investment can provide a kicker, because unlike debt, where you know there is a cap on what return you can earn, angel investing can provide a kicker, give a spike. Although obviously there's a risk involved there, but it provides a kicker that your traditional debt equity cannot give. A lot of people ask, is angel investing a debt investment? Do you give a loan or a debt to a startup, or do you invest in equity? It's equity. So it's a play on share price. You invest at an early stage when the startup is still young, and you therefore get to buy equity at a low price. And over a period of time, as the startup does well, its products get accepted, its valuation increases, the share price obviously goes up. Apart from investing, it's an opportunity to engage with very innovative and very disruptive minds, because the founders of all these startups are very talented, and it's a great way to learning from them is a big opportunity as well. So typically, you could choose as an angel investor to invest only your money, but you could choose to be more active as well. You could get involved by committing some of your time to say, I'd like to support these startups by making available to them your networks. A lot of these startups will require help in identifying new distributors or dealers, for example, or new manufacturing partners, or new supply chain sources, or they may need thinking and ideas around product design. I did see in the list of people who are attending that there are some doctors. So a lot of these biotech startups could consult doctors for advice on the applications that their products or services can deliver. So there's a great opportunity, apart from investing, to get involved in interacting with these startups with your time and making your network of connections available to them. So when you make such an investment or get involved with a startup, you can obviously create value. You get personal value and returns because the valuation grows. But there is value that we create for society by way of jobs, by way of impact in terms of, let's say, better healthcare or better agriculture in India. So there's value that gets created beyond valuation as well. Of course, with angel investments, we hope to create disproportionate returns because you're making a small investment, there's a high risk involved, but the hope is that there will be a high return. And these small ventures very often become global companies with a global footprint. So that's what the excitement of angel investment is all about. So typically, if we look at our own membership base at Indian Angel Network, 500 members, who is an angel investor? There are many different kinds of people. Some of them are successful entrepreneurs who have made money in their business and now want to come back and support other young startups by giving their money, by giving their time, or investing their money, investing their time. In many cases, they're business owners who may be owners of small businesses or big companies who obviously have a surplus money available. But once again, they believe that they want to be part of this emerging asset class of angel investing. So a lot of our members are people who own their own businesses. And we're getting an increasing number of people from the corporate sector who are senior people who run business verticals, are P&L heads, and who have both the expertise and money, because in the corporate sector, beyond a certain age, when you the salaries that you earn are far more than what you need, and therefore you're looking at something as an interesting asset class to invest in. Besides these categories, we also believe that for biotech, there's a great deal of interest coming from medical professionals, people in the healthcare industry, because they understand these sectors and they believe that this is an asset class they'd like to invest in. But I think the thing to keep in mind is an angel investor is a risk taker, has to be patient. You don't get those disproportionate returns over time. There is a risk return paradigm, and it's not in a way for the faint-hearted in that sense. You need to be prepared for the fact that if you make 10 investments, 3 of them the businesses might shut down, not because the founders did something wrong, but purely because startup businesses are inherently risky. But some of those investments will give you very high returns, and overall, your average return could turn out to be very high. So an angel investor is someone who says, look, apart from my money, I'd like to engage and support these startups by leveraging my network. And they want to be part of the entrepreneur's journey. So that typically defines who an angel investor is. How do you invest as an angel investor? So this chart broadly explains it. So the angel fund is what is known as an AIF Category 1 fund. It's registered with SEBI. So that's the entity that invests in each of these startups. Now, all of us as individual investors, our money gets routed through this fund. And now when you give money to the fund, it's not as though your money gets invested in every startup that the fund invests in. You have a choice. Every time there is a new startup that is being evaluated for investment, you can say, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not interested. And your money, you will then invest the money only in those startups that appeal to you, after you listen to those startups make a presentation, after you ask them the questions that you'd like to, and then you invest in. So not everyone has to invest in startup 1, 2, 3, and 4. You might choose to say, I'll invest in 1, but not 2, 3, and 4. Someone else might say, I'll invest in startup number 2 and 4, but not 1 and 3. So those are individual choices as to which opportunities you'd like to invest in. So once those investments happen, over a period of time, as the startups grow in value, at some point of time down the line, there is an exit. And there are two ways that typically as an angel investor, we get an exit. And there is a third way also, but I'll talk about the first two in greater detail. As an angel investor, you're one of the first few investors in the startup. In subsequent rounds, when the startup raises money, which is classically known as Series A, Series B, Series C investment, some of those incoming investors may want to buy out angel investors. That is one way to get your exit and return. And obviously, that later investor at Series B or C is coming in at a higher valuation, and therefore they buy out that angel investor by providing that high valuation. So that's one way of exit. The second way of exit could be that some of these companies could just get acquired at some stage by a bigger company, whether from India or from outside. And that's the second way in which you could get an exit, if you choose to stay on till that point of time. The third way is if the company becomes very big, does an IPO, that's the third way you could get an exit. So that's the broad pattern for an angel investment. So you exit and make returns by partnering with the company. You share your learnings with the company so that they get to higher levels of achievement. You stay with them today and tomorrow, so it's not a short-term investment where you invest today and get out next year. I think you should be prepared for 3, 4, 5 years. One of my startup investments is now actually 10 years old because different startups have a different growth trajectory. So there is a degree of patience that's required to stay with the startup today and tomorrow, to help them in some cases think through their strategy and operations. You also have to be conscious of the fact that some startups will have challenges while they have their strengths, and very often they will work through those challenges, and some succeed, some do not. So we have to live that journey with the startup. But as BioAngels, at the central level, there will always be an effort to say, what is the right time for our investors to exit? So there is obviously a group of people, of which Divya is a part of the team, who's focused on that aspect. But at all points of time, we are very transparent with the founder of the startup that we will stay with you for a certain part of your journey. After that, bigger investors will come in and we will exit. So startup founder always knows that there is an exit that is required by angel investors. And so the idea is to stay tuned into discussions. There will be regular updates provided, which says, how is the startup making progress? How is their growth? Their financials will get shared. And that, so you stay tuned in those discussions. And then finally, at some point of time, there is a smart exit that happens. So that's the broad total. I'm going to stop here. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. We can stay connected. But I'm going to hand this over now to Dr. Manish Diwan to talk a bit more about the biotech sector particularly, and how the work they have done leads to better investment opportunities. Over to you, Dr. Diwan.
Thank you, Srikant. I think that was a fairly good overview for the beginning of investment journey as an angel or an HNI who wants to move this side and facilitate growth of or take part in the growth story of the biotech startup ecosystem. What I will try and bring in awareness is that how is this biotech sector evolving in terms of the innovation and the startup growth, with some examples. And I'll also use a few slides to elucidate that. Can you see my slide deck? Second.
Yes, we can.
Are you looking at the presenter's view, or are you can you see the full full slide deck?
Yeah, we can see the full title slide.
All right, great. So Biotech is an enabling body, which is, just a second, I think I am, yeah, probably this, is this the full slide deck that you can see now?
No, sir. Earlier it was the full
Earlier
slide
it was
deck.
fine. Now we're seeing this presenter view actually.
Sorry. I need to swap. Okay, great. So Biotech is one central enabler which is helping building the innovation ecosystem in the biotech sector, especially through startups, entrepreneurs, and creating large capacity buildings so that innovation ecosystem grows as a not-for-profit dedicated public sector enterprise under Ministry of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology. The biotech sector, as we talk about, is comprises of healthcare, agri-tech, industrial, the large segment of today's and tomorrow's unmet need that gets covered in the sector. As a central enabler, there are several national missions which we integrate and bring focus and create that capacity building and facilitate the ecosystem. And this is one of the largest mission is Startup India, Make in India. But we get involved in, let's say, COVID Suraksha, Swachh Bharat, INSEPI, National Biopharma Missions, and several others, Digital Healthtech, for example. So if you look at the ecosystem, there is a churning of knowledge that has been created in the academic and research environment. And that knowledge is getting ready to translate into products and technologies. And startup ecosystem has uniquely get poised and has become a centerpiece of this entire activity to make that happen more efficiently. And this has been surging, and we've been seeing evolving of unicorns and several success stories that has become now everyday's affair compared to, let's say, a decade ago or earlier. There were very little evidence of startups and private entities getting into being. Important to note is here that within the COVID years of 2020 and 2021, we were still able to see close to 900, 1,000 new startups in the biotech field getting incorporated. These numbers have grown over the last 10 years, and sizable growth, which is evidence. And this has been facilitated through the capacity building, both in incubation centers, the funding that has gone in, and the outcome is also evident in terms of the number of products that have reached to the market through startups and SMEs, the funds raised by these startups, the intellectual property that they have created. If you look down 3-4 years later, by 2025, these numbers are further expected to scale. So there is a continuous, there's a likelihood that these numbers and these tangible outcomes are certain to grow as we move along. Biotech has, as I mentioned, we supported the ecosystem through several of our efforts, from seeding to all the way to commercialization. Funding aspect is one critical element. That is where we are talking about the BioAngels too. The incubation centers have been spread across the country, helping talent pool to utilize the common access facilities and come on board to take their nascent ideas, identification of unmet need, and create that tangible outcome in terms of products and technologies from across the system, across the country. So much so that you could see that this vibrancy of the startup ecosystem, both sector specific as well as sector agnostic, is kind of spread across the ecosystem. This slide also suggests that the talent pool getting harnessed and utilized, each dot on the map suggests these are the budding entrepreneurs which are spread across the nation and utilizing and accessing the ecosystem. The uh, access to the ecosystem is yielding into products and technologies. When they are moving from ideation to field valid POC, field validation, and to the manufacturing, the startup base has expanded at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the ideation to POC. Through various funding provisions, we have tried to fill in certain valley of death as the gaps in terms of the funding availability. And over a period of time, we see that the base of the pyramid where granting aid goes in, there's a large number of startups. I mentioned about there are 3,700 beneficiaries who have got benefited out of it. There is now accumulation of startups from TRL 5 to 7, and that is where that niche bracket needs to be catered through a funding excess from about 50 lakhs to, let's say, 2 crores. And that is where BioAngels come in to fill in that gap in the ecosystem. And this is a growing gap because the base of the pyramid is expanding, and so is the churning, which is moving forward. Churning of startups who are moving forward after successfully completion of their POCs towards field validation and commercialization. I'll give you some examples. One that we have seen when we piloted firsthand to provide some of these funding opportunities at this segment from TRL 3 to TRL 7. What we see that in seed and leap fund, which is from TRL 3 or TRL 5 onwards, a small corpus which has gone from a Biotech side to these early stage investors, early stage startups, they have been able to generate follow-on funding to the tune of 7-fold to 10-fold. And that too has happened within a span of 3 to 4 years. So a small amount of 75 crore has been able to facilitate 125 startups, yielding more than 1,000 crores in this short span. So there is an evidence that we have seen firsthand in the segment, that is the growth potential. What a couple of slides I will show where we see that people, startups who have been able to raise the initial funding, there are takers for the follow-on funding through VCs and growth stage VCs too. So examples have come in both deep tech as well as low tech, and across the biotech sectors that we talked about, health, SaaS-based solutions which are implicating in the biotech sector, drug discovery, waste to value conversions, or getting more efficient industrial processes built in for deployment. So there has been fundraising done at various dimensions from 400 crores to, let's say, 50 crores. There are sizable numbers of such success stories which we see. There are startups, for example, Pandorum, who do not have a product, commercial product in the market, but still the value proposition that they bring such startups, because of the innovation quotient, is so high that they are able to attract funding in the sector. There are first-in-class molecules, for example, biologics, people serving solutions such as breast cancer solutions through diagnostic and scanning closer to mammography. There are import substitutions like implants and uh, dental products like Lexer. So there are various examples which have actually shown and demonstrated success. One recent example was a biotech startup expo that we just hosted in June, where Honorable Prime Minister himself inaugurated the event. We saw a large congregation of such successful startups. So with this, these slides, I have uh, tried to reflect that there is an ecosystem which is matured in the country, which is facilitating biotech startup innovation ecosystem. There is an evidence that these startups have been able to show success and raise funds both from angels, and once they have generated funds from angels, VCs also come up and support them. And thirdly, through this engagement, both Srikant, myself, and the BioAngel team is reflecting that there is a platform available now which can be harnessed by potential investors, be it professional investors as angels, HNIs who are thinking that they can they can start considering biotech startups as an investment proposition, and the platform helps uh, to address their queries and facilitate such efforts. Back to you, Divya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Diwan. Thank you, Shrikant, sir, for sharing your wonderful insights about the biotech industry and the angel investment and the opportunity that these sectors bring in for the investors who want to start their angel investment journey or who are already in the sector and doing wonderful work, but want to know more about these sectors as an opportunity and what's there. We now have some questions from our audience that we would like to address. Um, the first question that we have is from Mr. Shravan Kumar. How to evaluate the startup at early stage that has great idea or big hardware that is not yet prototyped? Is it good to go with safe note? How does the exit happens with safe agreement? Shrikant sir, would you like to take it up?
There are too many questions in
Too many in
subjects
one.
in
Yeah.
that. So I think one is, yeah, obviously, when a startup is at an early stage, and in the case of biotech or in many other sectors, there may be negligible revenues or no revenues when you're making an angel investment. I think fundamentally, there are two or three questions that investors would evaluate. One is that, is there a big problem being solved by the product or service the startup is taking to the market? And therefore, is it a large market opportunity? That's one question. Second is the technology or IP that this particular startup has. Is it unique? Is it differentiated? Is it better than what other people have in the market? And therefore, what is, in the case of biotech particularly, IP becomes important because that's how you retain a competitive advantage over a long period of time. The third one would be the team. Actually, the team aspect is most important. There may be a great market opportunity, but are you the right team with the right set of skill sets to capture that market opportunity? So I would say, is the problem big enough? Do you have a product with substantial IP or differentiation around it? And third is, are you the right team to build it? So combination of those factors allows you to decide whether to make the investment or not. With respect to valuation, traditional methods like discounted cash flow, revenue multiple, none of those really work or hold true at an early stage because that would just be an Excel spreadsheet exercise. You can't really do discounted cash flow because you'll make some bizarre assumptions there. So typically what's happened is that most investors now have certain thumb rules that if you're just an early stage idea, and Dr. Diwan spoke about TRL, which means technology readiness level. So most investors now have certain thumb rules which say, If you're very early stage and you just have a prototype, then broadly they will look at you at the valuation in a certain range. But you've gone beyond that, hypothetically, if you've got patented products and you've got regulatory approvals and you finished your clinical trials and you're close to entering the market, you'll get a higher valuation. So once again, investors would have a certain benchmark of what bucket you fall into. If you're revenue generating, then that's even better. That's a third bucket. So broadly, investors in their mind would have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or slab A, slab B, slab C for what valuation they're willing to assign to you. And that is one way, that is predominantly the way it happens in India. Safe notes are gradually coming into vogue. In the mature market like US, safe notes are actually the commonplace at very early stage, because investors say, let me not waste time negotiating or thinking about valuation. By the time this startup goes and raises the next round of funding, that investor can decide valuation and I will get a discount to that. So we're beginning to see safe notes in India, but not in substantial measure. Safe notes, I'm personally beginning to see in India when there are international investors making that early investment, they're familiar and comfortable with safe notes. But as of now in India, in the biotech sector or in the sectors that Dr. Diwan described, broadly, there are slabs that people know that at what stage of the startup, what valuation you're willing to give. And that's the basic method that you see actually.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope this addresses Mr. Shravan's query. Next question that we have is from Dr. Saket. He would like to know the current challenges of startups in medtech. Dr. Diwan, would you like to take this up?
The medtech area is really vast. There is a high unmet need in that sector. Close to about 80% of medical devices and diagnostics are typically imported in the country. So that reflects that there is an existing identified requirement which is getting replenished by importing those solutions. And more often than not, we see that mere importing does not help for best utilization of the solution in all possible geographies and all possible use case scenarios. So more often than not, it would require local customization and improvisation. And that is where the startup ecosystem comes into being. A Biotech's experience is that more than 50% of our 3,700 beneficiaries are engaged in health tech sector, and there is a sizable proportion which is relating to the medtech side. Now, once they create these solutions, the regulatory environment is one aspect which requires further clarity, both in terms of for the users, like for startups who are creating these solutions, like what are the compliances that are required. And second, the notifications from the CDSCOs that yes, after you develop a particular solution, that can be deployed and put to use for patient handling or a subject screening, etc. So it's both. So that's one of the challenges area. Second is once they create these medical devices, would it be as efficient or better than the existing solution? So field validation is another challenge that typically medtech devices face. But once these are overcome, medtech devices created in India by these startups have seen success and deployment.
I'd like to add just one more point to the list that Dr. Diwan gave, is that medtech devices made in India suffer from a bit of a perception problem also with doctors. That's because in the past, for unfortunate reasons, a lot of shoddy products came out in India when they were made locally. Not enough attention paid to design, to reliability, etc. And therefore, there have been doctors who had bad experiences and therefore kind of resorted to using multinational products, and which is why we have a large import bill for medtech equipment. But the current crop of startups is very conscious about quality, reliability, etc., but they still have to fight a perception battle with the medical fraternity, who have been who've been used to not working with only imported products and not local products. So for the doctors who are on the list attending the session today, I would only request you to give a fair chance to the local medtech startups who are now coming up, because I think we're seeing a new crop actually.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Ms. Purna. What is the average amount to invest in one startup as a new angel investor? And she has a follow-up question to that. What are the average returns that can be expected in 3 to 5 years? Understanding it will be different from sector to sector.
Yeah. So I'll try and answer that. I mean, if you go through a network like BioAngels, or then typically there's a minimum investment amount that's stipulated when you make an investment. Divya, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we saying 5 lakhs per deal as the amount? Because that's
as an investor, yes.
As an investor. So what would happen, Purna, is that, let's say, as a BioAngels as a network decides to invest 2 crores or 2.5 crores in a startup, there will be about 30 odd angel investors who will come together to make that investment happen. So, but each investor is expected to put in at least 5 lakhs. Some investors may put in a larger amount, 10 lakh, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs, but the minimum would be 5 lakhs. So that's the first part to your answer. The second part, in terms of returns, I don't think we have enough historical data to say what the average returns in biotech sector have been. You might find some anecdotal evidence from some investors, but I'll answer this question in 2 different ways. As a fund, if you look at Indian Angel Network, and if you'd invested in every startup that Indian Angel Network has invested in, imagine you'd put in 5 lakhs in each one of those. The average IRR that Indian Angel Network has had, and this is data that keeps getting updated all the time, was upwards of 30%, for example. But that assumes you'd invested in every deal. But that's necessarily not going to be the case. You'll pick and choose. Based on that, it might vary. Secondly, that what might also happen is, given the diversity of startups within biotech itself, and Dr. Diwan spoke about 5 or 6 different subsectors, some may give better returns, some may not give as good returns, but we'll have to watch the future and go. But that's, so 30% plus was at Indian Angel Network level. Different investors, depending on where they invest in, may see lower, may see higher. So it's hard to come up with data beyond what the data that I gave you, but hopefully this was a good starting point.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, patent royalty deals, is it beneficial to the investors?
Dr. Diwan?
See, that is what one thing which makes one particular startup's proposition different than a normal expansion of a business case. So the entry barrier is what is required and what is inherently there in the biotech startup deals. Because of the intellectual wealth that a particular founder and founding team has created for a product, brings the longevity for the startup solution to stay relevant and competitive in the market. So having a patent is definitely looked as one of the major factors that the startups, though technically sound, would stay in business, because the very nature of the game is that you would require 5 to 10 years time before you get into the market from inception. And the patents help you draw both interest from the investors as well as the follow-on investors. Plus, it helps you survive much longer. With regards to royalty linked to patent, if you're asking, Srikant, would you like to comment on that?
I'll add to that. So I think what tends to happen is there are two, in India, the focus with startups mostly has been to say, grow your business, generate revenues, and you become large enough to get acquired or do an IPO. But when I've spent time with some of the life sciences incubators in the Western markets like US, I see a equally big emphasis on saying, uh, in a biotech startup, if you have strong IP, you go out and look for royalty income sooner rather than later. Because if you have something that is very innovative, there are bigger companies, pharma companies, healthcare companies who want access to that technology. And therefore, you generate a royalty stream by licensing your technology. Because the alternative of creating your own sales and distribution network and building a brand, taking it to market just takes longer, and it takes effort and investment. So in the Western markets, royalty as a source of revenue is a big focus. In India, it hasn't happened so far. I know that some of the bio incubators have been trying to do create infrastructure for technology transfer from a licensing standpoint, but I don't think we've built up enough expertise and confidence in India to be able to do that in large measure yet. But I think it's certainly going to be important going forward in future.
Great. Thank you, sir. Next question is from Ms. Anuradha Shankar. What fields in sanitation do you include in BIRAC? Dr.
Okay.
Diwan.
Can you repeat the question? What fields in?
In sanitation, do you include in BIRAC?
So there is no separate subsectioning done on that field. Sanitation, a clean environment, waste to value. These are all part of biotech solutions that are considered for support under biotech through BioAngels.
Thank you. I hope that addresses your query, Ms. Anuradha. Next question is from Mr. Dheeraj Mahajan. He says, I am an associate professor at IIT. I want to initiate a startup based on my strengths in micro manufacturing of medical devices, stunts. But recently, I have also incubated another startup in hydrogen domain. My question is that will this multiple engagement reduces my chances for the angel investment, and does BIRAC or Angel Network put restrictions on supporting a startup if founder is engaged in multiple areas?
Yeah, so this one I can take, and Dr. Diwan can also add. See, when investors come in, I will not answer it from BIRAC standpoint. I'll answer it from a commercial investor standpoint, angel investors or otherwise. They would expect the founders to be fully committed to the idea that the investor is investing in. If the investor sees that your time and energy is divided across two different ideas, and one of which they are investing in, and one of which you're doing on the side, that will be a negative in your case. Because it's not fair. When they invested money, they're assuming that you will put your heart and soul into that business to make it grow and take it forward. If the two businesses you're looking at are related and can be part of the same company, that is a different story. But in your case, manufacturing, micro manufacturing of stents and something to do with hydrogen are very different. And therefore, your investor is going to invest in one of these that they believe is promising, and they would be very unhappy if half your time or some part of your time is being spent on the other one. But from a BIRAC standpoint, I'm sure Dr. Diwan has a point of view as well.
I think this is similar. So the startup activity and creating a product requires like more than 100% of the devotion and time and energy. In this case, you are already having an additional responsibility of being an associate professor at IIT. So you are splitting yourself, distributing your talent too thin across all these factors. From BIRAC, what we have created an SOP is that if you have more than 20% equity in a startup, then you will not get repeat funding for another startup. If you have already got BIRAC funding for one scheme. with regards to, for example, you being a faculty entrepreneur, you can be an advisor to more than one companies, but each of these companies would have its own fate, not directly linked with you. The team members could have different expertise and to take them forward, and you can be one of the advisors in more than one company. That is seen as sharing your experience and wealth of knowledge, and not limiting and underestimating your potential to just one one product getting creation. But from startup perspective, if you really want to see either of your attempts reaching to a successful outcome, the advice and recommendation would be, as Srikant said, focus on one most which you prioritize most, and then go after it and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Aditi. If the startup has raised investment from BioAngel network and simultaneously qualify for big or leap fund, can the investment be shown as startup's contribution for matching big or leap fund?
All right, this is Biotech has a lead fund, which has this purpose that technologies which have reached beyond POCs, maybe around technology readiness level 5 and up, they can be facilitated so that they can generate follow-on investments from VCs and follow-on rounds from angels. BioAngels is another initiative, again supported through Biotech, but anchored in a public-private partnership. And we do not get involved in terms of selection and this investments process itself. So this is an independent outcome of Biotech's direct initiative. So theoretically, yes, if you are let's say, for big, you do not require a co-funding as a requirement, but for BIPP and SWIBRI, other schemes, they require a funding contribution from the startup side. Now, if a startup chooses to dilute its equity and raises funds, that means it is some funding they are bringing on the table for applying for a particular scheme of Biotech. So from that perspective, it sounds feasible and okay. So
that was a smart question. So next question is from Mr. Rishikesh Tiwari. What is the scope of genetic and oncology diagnostic startup in India, and how many such startups associated with BioAngels? Srikant sir, Dr. Diwan.
So no, I would kind of defer to Dr. Diwan on this because I don't have an insight into this aspect.
I'll take it up. Who is this? Rishikesh. Rishikesh, if you had noticed, I had shown you a couple of examples of startups who have been raising funds big time. So a lot of them fall under oncology and genomics. For example, Redcliffe, MedGenome, MapMyGenome. These are some of the startups who have done, who have shown success and demonstrated success by raising follow-on funding and gone beyond Series A also. So there is a lot of activity in this area. There are oncology-driven solutions, which are, for example, Lectorius, which has created a diagnostic solution to identify single circulating tumor cells from the peripheral blood, and that has seen a large success. Neramide, which I showed, which is a breast cancer screening tool. And oncology, as you would realize, that is the largest segment, close to maybe 25 to 30% of the segment in the entire healthcare is occupied by oncology segment, both in terms of industry as well as the ecosystem that is growing. So there's a large potential in that segment, and there is more forward movement in biomarker assisted uh, biomarker assisted healthcare solutions, which are largely driven through the genomics. So there's a great potential, Rishikesh.
Thank you so much, sir, for this. We'll be taking last two questions due to paucity of time. Next question that we have is, can anyone like a clinician without angel investing background become an angel investor in the sector?
Yeah,
Srikant, it's for you.
definitely say so. In fact, I would say that at BioAngels, it is a keen desire to have as many clinicians and medical professionals, experienced doctors coming in to join BioAngels, because certainly it's an investment opportunity for you, but we would also value your expertise with respect to evaluating those startups, also the guidance that you can provide them with respect to how they should go forward. So I would wholeheartedly welcome you and welcome other people like you to be part of BioAngels. You can be, and angel investing, just like any other investing, is something that you learn over a period of time. And here, the good part is that there is an infrastructure in the form of BioAngels, which is providing a service to say, look, we'll do the preliminary evaluation, selection, etc., and then make available a set of investment opportunities to you. And at that stage, you still have an opportunity to look at those businesses closely and say, do I want to invest or not? So yes, most welcome. You should certainly consider it.
Yeah, Divya, I just want to add here, we are seeing both sides. There are founders who are practicing physicians, surgeons in the clinic, from the clinic side, and we are seeing great interest from the clinicians who want to invest and facilitate both in startup creation, facilitation, and investment. In fact, we have 6 bio incubation centers now seated in the hospitals. So you can imagine the kind of synergy the two will bring, and the integration of various disciplines of talent from engineering, management, to the practicing side, clinical side, and the biochemists and other life sciences people into being. So this is a great intermixing, and people like you who have both knack of the problem statement, deeper understanding of from the user's perspective, can judge which and choose which proposition to pick up for investment. And I think BioAngels is one platform that is for the beginners to help navigate, and for the syndicate investments, de-risk and guide you on the course of action. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plus, at BioAngels, we actually aim to become an inclusive platform for all the clinicians, angel investors, experts, hospitals, and everybody is more than welcome to join us and helping to build a huge network and facilitate the biotech ecosystem and health tech ecosystem further. One last question, that is from a founder, what should be the exit strategy of founders for in the health tech and biotech space?
I think we've covered this partly in the past with some of the other questions, but if you're a founder, I hope you're committed to building a successful business. I think that's the prerequisite. And if you're building a good, promising business, you can take it to a certain stage where other bigger companies find you attractive and they come in as a strategic investor and maybe make an acquisition. That is certainly one exit possibility. And in fact, I would say that's the most likely exit possibility, because the other one, which is to take it to an IPO, requires you to be much bigger and in today's stock market environment, profitable as well. And therefore, IPO, while it's a possibility, I would say that in the emerging sector of biotech, I think an acquisition is far more likely. So I think these are the two possibilities. But for both of these, you have to have a business that has something unique. Someone who acquires you will acquire you because you have some strong IP, or you have a product which is innovative that they believe will take them a long time to build, and therefore they will acquire you. But if it's an IPO, you need a revenue growth, bottom line, over and above just a product and IP. So those are the two broad paths, and that's how I would answer your question.
Thank you so much,
And be,
sir.
and be ready for a slower dilution of the equity.
That's right.
We have now reached the end of today's masterclass. I hope we were able to present you the answers to most of the questions. I know some are still remaining, but due to paucity of time, we had to skip those. But please feel free to write to us at info@bioangels.vc if you have any further queries. If you have any queries related to investment, or if you want to join us as investors, please write to us at investor@bioangels.vc. Uh, we are happy to invite angel investors to BioAngels and start their angel investing journey with us. Discover and get early access to pool of high potential startups in these sectors, which are actually witnessing exponential growth. Stay tuned for our next session that is on opportunities and risk in angel investing in the healthcare and biotech sector on coming Friday, that is 30th September 2022 at 5:30 p.m. with Mr. Arun Seth. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Diwan. Thank you, Srikant sir, for this insightful session. I hope our audience have learned a lot from this. They got to know about BioAngels, how BioAngels is working towards facilitating investments in biotech sector, how BIRAC and IN have done this partnership, and how BIRAC has been doing this phenomenal work for the past 10 years in the biotech and health tech space, and how they have been supporting the startups. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Divya.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you, Srikant.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Diwan. Thank you, audience.